Carl, get away.
Hello, Trent.
Hi, Jesse.
How's it going?
Never better.
Never better.
Don't remember it anyway.
Must have been in Nebraska before you came.
I was. For 2 days after Manitoba. Are we starting?
Yeah, we're ready.
Is there no shotgun or anything? We just go? Welcome everyone, I'm Trent Luce. On the air, we are debuting for the first time ever a panel discussion talking about where we are at today in pork production, maybe just the show pig industry, or where we're going to go. So we're going to introduce what we're going to do is I'm instructing you guys to be aggressive and assertive and be very dynamic. Okay, Cade? Got it. All right, I'm going to ask everybody just to grab the mic, introduce yourselves, and just a little quick snippet about you, and then we'll start the discussion.
My name is Jay Winter. I am the owner of Wintex Farms in Lubbock, Texas. I've lived there since way back. Been there about 50 years at our location. We've raised purebred and crossbred hogs in the state of Texas for a little over 50 years now. And I also work for Sunglow Feed. Originally was out of Kansas, and now it's a more northeastern Brookville, Ohio-based feed company. And I work with them on a continual basis also.
My name's James Backman. I'm from Denair, California. We run 150 sows. We call our operation Small Town Genetics. Stud about 15 boars. We're basically geared towards the junior show ring. I serve on the NJSA advisory board and pretty much chase the show pig circuit.
Cade Hummel from Cabry, Illinois. Currently am product manager for Lindner United Feeds. Been a field representative for the National Swine Registry for the past 7 years. Been involved in the swine industry of some facet probably for the last 20 years.
My name's Shane Brenning from Kyoto, Iowa, owner and runner of Brenning Genetics. Been selling show pigs for about 20 years now. A little different beginning than a lot of people probably nowadays. I grew up never really showing hogs. Had a commercial hog operation. My dad, 150 sow, fair to finish. He's kind of like a dinosaur. He still does do that. So from a practicality and production standpoint, I understand when we talk about that. And it's been fun to implement some of that into the show pig industry as we've continued that in our business.
All right, thank you guys, and we're going to jump right in. I know that all of you spend your fair time judging, but James, you're judging today, and we want to start with the question about the functionability, the composition, the type of pigs that are being picked to win classes today. What do you see as where we are at and how it relates to the overall pork industry is what Shane was referring to.
Well, I think that's a great question and one we get asked a lot on different forums and stuff we're on. But I think it is important that we are in a show ring, so we obviously have to keep some style, some balance, some look, some ring appeal in those hogs. But we put a lot of focus on opening up those pigs in terms of their skeletal width, putting some productivity through the center portion of their body there, some that added bone, that added with the skeleton, and those go back to the production traits that Shane was talking about earlier. Typically, kind of the wider, the bigger rib, the bigger body we make those hogs, the better they are on the feed floor for us. So I think we do try and tie some of those things in. You always get the questions, what's the right frame size? And I guess to me it's all balancing up at your particular weights. When height, length, and width kind of balance up together, everything's proportioned. Whether you're down in a show that's got a 260-pound weight or up at a 280-pound weight limit, it's just balancing everything out. So putting all the style, muscles obviously got to be important, the right fat to muscle ratios and those things. But just a big, wide, stout-made hog that's got some show ring appeal, some muscle, and some cutability, and I think is where we're at right now.
Very similar to what James said. I think the ideal hog has to be proportionate to its own skeleton, depending on the weight. The same hog that's good at 220 may not be the best hog at 280. So you kind of got to find the right balance and the right design that fits the weight range that you're in that particular class. And I think the balance is the term that I tend to use the most, because that's I guess the thing that I look for the best is just a really complete, well-designed, sound, functional package that has plenty of muscle.
This is Shane. And I really like where we're at in terms of the type and kind of hog in the last couple years. For me, it's hogs that are moderate in their frame size and offer us the width and substance. I was probably one that has always been a fan of moderation of frame, and in terms of the reason why, I think some people don't understand why. For me, it's always been running 200 sows in the wintertime in the state of Iowa. You'll find real fast why you don't like big framed hogs, because those big framed ones tend to be flatter and narrow and not able to keep their fleshing ability up, and therefore then I have harder time breeding them back, and they're not as good in the frame house when they come thin into the frame house. So there is some practicality along why I have always liked them moderate framed. I think where we're at in terms of the type and kind, I get asked a question a lot, are we going to change, are we going to swing? You know, we used to in the 70s and 80s and 90s, and I really don't think you're going to see the pendulum swing near as much as we used to. And the reason is, before in the 70s and 80s and 90s, our show industry was somewhat led by the purebred breeders that were still selling hogs to the commercial producer. Except nowadays, that is gone. I mean, we just got to admit that that part of the industry is gone, and so now our focus is on all show pigs, and I'm okay with that. That's where we're at. We didn't have the numbers to be able to fulfill those numbers for the commercial businesses, and so now we just got to make hogs good and take them to the shows for the kids to participate in all the good things that come along besides the hog showing.
Jay, before you weigh in on that, you and I are nearly what Shane is calling dinosaurs, except I took a 15-year hiatus, got out of the pig business. I was one of the guys that Shane's talking about that was raising purebred boars and gilts, selling them in the 80s and the early 90s. And as I come back, tying into what we just talked about here, I'm doing a mix of natural breeding and AI. And when we pick these flat-topped, high tail set gilts that have maybe not even a vulva big enough to stick my pinky in, how do we balance those reproductive traits along with the type and the show ring appeal that we're looking for?
Well, there again, my ancestry and my basis from what I was all raised through was all through purebred hogs, and of course we've all evolved into selling more and more crosses all the time, and that's how we've got to make our living. We always, as I grew up, all with natural breeding, and the selection pressures were different there than they are now, of course, but at our place, we still use a little bit of natural breeding, and I think females have got to look like females. And, you know, within a certain herd, we all keep replacement females. And I think maybe our selection criteria should be a little bit different there than it is for the end product. And so at our place, you know, the girls have got to look like girls. Underlines and quality is still very important in our house. And if you get caught up into the selling and into the marketing, I think you'll let some of that things get away from you. I think some of the younger generation has got into some problems there because they didn't focus as much on reproduction. And so through my growing up through all this process, we've always, and through my kids, I keep harping and hounding on reproduction, and fair house is important, and breeding tech. You know, all things have changed so much in the last 10 years with technology and how we do breed a lot, that I think, you know, you got to kind of step back a little bit and think about the reproduction deal just a little bit more, maybe what we do sometimes. Then I think you can go on with the boars and the AI that we use and can make that terminal product that's what we all end up doing.
James, do you want to weigh in on that?
Oh, I agree with Jay. We got to keep our sows looking like females, and one of the things I was thinking about in that is, especially in the farrowing house, and those of you who have sows, some of you kids out there, or those of us that have numbers, those big power sows like we like to talk about that are wide and thick and big boned and big bodied and big skulled and all those things that we use as terms in the show ring there when we're judging barrows, those are the ones that typically correlate to sows that are more trouble in the farrowing house. We got to pull more pigs, they have more trouble getting them out, and in our game, ours is a little bit of a numbers thing. We have a little more of a commercial aspect to it there where you know, we got to have 150 sows. We sell numbers out there in my part of the country. We maybe don't have those guys coming in to buy those elite high-end ones as much, but we have just lots of good, solid pigs at a moderate price. So numbers are extremely important to us, and I'm sure, you know, a guy like Jay that runs a lot of sows, a guy like Shane that runs a lot of sows too, that you got to get numbers out of them. The sows got to lay down, have babies. They got to get bred. They got to work. That's a high priority for us.
But, Kate, I continue to see people judging, not naming you personally, that select a market gilt and a breeding gilt to be the same thing.
Yeah, and that is pretty frustrating as I've traveled the country the last couple of years watching these shows and watching people not put selection pressure on the reproductive traits and the function traits of a female gets quite bothersome, because we do get ourselves into some trouble in terms of like they're talking about in the farrowing house and even out in the breeding barn, trying to get those gilts to come back into heat at a proper time and to get to conceive on the first time becomes troublesome, and then ultimately we're not making enough money on those females to keep them around, to keep in production, because they're not making bears for us to sell, and they're not making reproductive gilts to put back in the herd. So yeah, it is frustrating, and for someone that's had to been on that other side of the fence for the last 7 years trying to fight for it, it's been hard to see, but it's fun to watch people like Jay and Shane and some of those older breeders, Daryl Drake and Earl Kane, to kind of talk about the reproductive traits and put some selection emphasis on that again.
Old timer, Shane, go.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Been in this now 20 years, and I am now one of the older ones in this. And in the farrowing house and stuff, and obviously I've made my mistakes as much as anyone over the last 20 years. For me, I don't necessarily think that you can call a female just if she doesn't have enough bone. You call one feminine, whatever. I call her frail. I think if you put your selection pressure on length of hip and length of front, but still have them moderate and square and big boned, I can't say you can just automatically say that a squatty little one is going to be bad in the farrowing house, because at my place that's not the case. It's typically those length of hip ones that get me in trouble, or sometimes for me, because I am in still of a rush because I'm still impatient and too young, sometimes I flat breed them too young, and I'm always trying to get that next generation and make hogs better and get it faster, when in the end I'm not making excuses for moderate hogs, but I was trying to still farrow hogs at 10 and a half, 11 months of age. It's just not going to happen. And then when a lot of the older purebred people have been there, done that, and way wiser in their years than me, they'll tell me that I don't have any problems in the farrowing house, not at all. And then I'll look at their gilts. Well, heck, they're breeding on the ones that are the age of mine that are farrowing. So I think patience has got to be a virtue in terms of making those hogs a little bit too. And obviously I'm learning by that at my own place.
Jay, back in the day when us dinosaurs were marketing, we had two options. We'd have a production sale, we'd get folks to come by, or we'd come to the World Pork Expo and visit with people and market our product. Today, you don't have to leave home. You can utilize technology via the internet. How do you utilize technology at your place to benefit your marketing aspects?
Well, we just started doing some online sales, and you're right. For years we held our own production sale, and we had 3 breeds that we sold, boars and gilts, and people came. And like I said, that was back in the days when we did all natural breeding. Then when AI came along, well, there wasn't as much demand to sell boars anymore. We sell the elite ones at shows, but we didn't have the commercial. We didn't just have the trade, whether it was for commercial boars or whatever. And so things have evolved. And the thing that I guess that calling me a dinosaur, there's a lot of these young guys that I wished could have seen how things have really evolved, because the last 10 years has been the fastest as far as technology's been concerned in my lifetime. And so we do use the internet a lot more. We still use print advertising like a lot of people do. I still believe in that. I think it's an important place for that, but we do use more internet. We've now held about 4, I guess. We're just getting started at it. Internet sales. The thing that does is more than anything else, it just opens up your audience, because people from coast to coast can look at what you've got, whether they come and visually see them before sale. We get a lot of that when you get your pictures posted. If the people are in the geographic area that it works for them, they'll show up and look at them live. But you open up your audience so much, whether it's necessary for that set of pigs at that auction or just your program in general. I visited with a guy this morning that's from northern Ohio that looked at our pigs on our online sale here last week, and I think that just opens up doors, because he's asking about buying some replacement gilts that are genetically similar to those pigs. So that, I think, for us, where we live, like James and some of these, really we're kind of covering the whole United States here as far as geographics. It opens up our breeding program, and what we're trying to do at our house just opens it up to more people to see.
Oh, I agree 100%. I mean, the online deal has revolutionized the way that we market our pigs, and I mean, some firms are doing better jobs than others at it, obviously, but for us being out on the West Coast, we're 24 hours to get to where big pig country would be the closest part, and I mean even 36, 38 hours, to get to the eastern side of, where the the majority of the pigs are shown, the big shows are. So it's tough for us. You can't load up a load of pigs and run into some part of the country and put on a live sale. I'm one of those guys too that thinks there is nothing better than a live sale when the crowd's out there, the auctioneers chanting, things are rolling. But with that being said too, we do put stuff online just for the exposure. Someone sitting in Pennsylvania, you know, on the other side of the country can see what small town genetics our place has to offer. And it does, like Jay said, he touched on it, leads into other things. Someone calls, talks about your lot 4 barrow you're selling on the sale, what's he like? He gets outbid, calls back. You have a litter mate, you know, what sow's it out of? Leads into, we have a small boar stud too, selling semen that way. But on the other side of that, people in our part of the country that want to buy a pig from a Wintex Farms or a Brenning Genetics, it gives them the option of sitting in the comfort of their own home, bidding on a pig, talking with Shane and Jay on the phone, and places like this, you know, California trucks are out and be dragging pigs home that were bought online. So it's both ways. It helps a breeder sell them. It helps a buyer buy them too.
This is this is a surprise to you, but it appears to me that most people want to buy a 50-pound pig that looks like it's supposed to look at 280 pounds. And if you understand maturity patterns, you can't look at 50. Shane, you didn't look at 15 like you look at 50. Is there a level of education that you, the seller, needs to bring along with that to the buyer?
Well, I think it, you know, a product's only as good as the guy that sells it to you, and I think that that's something that over time people have evolved that will follow a certain breeder if they're what they're kind of wanting. You know, nutrition is so much different now than it was back, you know, 10, 15 years ago, that we get these pigs bloomier, quicker. We get them off the sow. We get that sow back in production quicker if you're wanting to do that. But I think nutrition's had a big part of that you can make these pigs look different at an early age. Yes, it's going against probably what we've all been taught over the years as far as maturity's concerned, but yet you can still read a lot of things differently now than we used to could. You know, we left sows we left the pigs on the sows till they were, you know, 8 weeks old. Now we wean them at 17, 18 days. So you look at things different than what we used to. But I think the one thing about online sales, and when you look at these pigs, you know, you pick up a phone, you call Shane and said, man, I really like this lot 5 pig, and Shane, or a lot of, you know, most guys will say, you know, that one looks really good, and I think that pig will make a really good lightweight, but I just don't think that sow's going to, you know, or that set of genetics is going to let that pig, you know, be a heavyweight pig. And I think that's a lot of what's happening. You know, before we started internet sales a lot at our house, we did a lot of sight unseen sales. And it just comes with trust, and you know, you scribe a pig to somebody and deliver them sight unseen, and you know, and we always had our deal, and I'm sure all the other guys do too, that you know, we're going to guarantee our product. And I think that the breeder standing behind that particular pig is real important, and that they have a sound breeding program, and then they're honest with people.
Shake it up a bit.
And it is something that I think every breeder knows how their own hogs look and mature, and so even with the online thing, I'm amazed. To me, I drug my feet a lot on the online thing just because I couldn't believe anyone would want to go buy stock online. And I guess for me, if I've done this for 20 years, and I darn sure would like to do it for another 20. I mean, if someone calls me up and want a further description, and it's one that doesn't have enough muscle or whatever, I'm darn sure going to tell them, because I don't want them to be disappointed in the product that they're getting. At the same time, it might be a hog that I think is going to mature into one at the end. And so, just like Jay said, I mean, if you have that kind of a honesty and approach to your business, whether you're selling them live or whether you're selling them on the internet, I think the longevity in the business is still comes back to the integrity and honesty within your breeding programs.
Yeah, I think it very similar there in terms of what these guys said, but on the other side of it, in terms of a buyer, you have to know the breeding programs that you're buying from, and have to have a relationship with those guys that you can pick up the phone and call those breeders and talk to the pigs and kind of tell them kind of how your style of feeding is, and they may put you on a different barrow or different gilt than kind of what you think what you were thinking you might like online. So you got to put a lot of faith in those breeders to kind of walk you through it. You might not like it, but if you have a relationship and been feeding hogs from those guys for a long time, they're not going to lead you astray, because it's in their best interest for you guys, for those people to buy those hogs, to go on and do as much winning with them as they possibly can. So from my standpoint, it was just as important to pick up that phone and still make that contact with those breeders and talk about the genetic base of that sow herd and the boar lines that they used.
Cade, you spent several years traveling the country as a National Swine Registry fieldman. You interacted with people every day, as all of us, as we come to events, we interact with people, we work with young people. What's maybe the one thing that's inspired you, or the one aha moment that told you this is why you do what you do?
It actually happened very early when I was a fieldman. I don't know if I stung, but I maybe got a little too opinionated on a Hampshire boar that I didn't think was perfect in all areas. And he actually came to this event, and Chuck Olson named him champion boar, and he sells for $50,000. And Jay Winter buys a part of him, and his name was Get Serious. That boar was probably the most intriguing hog that I had ever seen, but he was not perfect. He was way ahead of his time in terms of bone and muscle and rib shape and just eye appeal, but he had a fault that I couldn't at the time think was acceptable. And that hog probably went on and made as big of a difference in a quick period of time in the Hampshire breed, particularly on the female side of things. And as I got to watch that, I kind of got to mature as a fieldman and understand that not every hog has to be perfect, and not every great breeding hog has to fit the ideal mold of a champion. It could those true generators probably aren't correct in every area, but they certainly have the potential to go on and make that difference within that breed. And I was fortunate enough to have that happen to me at John Graber's house really early on, and it kind of set my tone for the rest of the time as a fieldman, that I accepted more faults in some of those pigs than what I would have early. And it was because of a breeder that's been around a long time kind of sat me down and explained that to me, and kind of let me work through my problems that way. So I really appreciated those breeders that took the time with someone young like me that was energetic and wanted to find faults in everything.
What's the question again? What got us hooked?
Yeah, one experience.
I guess the experience for me that, and I'll go back to, I'm same as Cade, like what makes you have that impact, or that where the light turned on as far as breeding pigs is, yeah, I agree 100%. One that you maybe weren't totally dialed in on, you watched them work for you, the pieces. But I guess for me and some of you young kids that are out there watching, what I would say is the thing that got me hooked on the show ring or the pig industry as a whole. I was just a farm kid. We actually grew up as dirt farmers. Back when I was a kid, and until I got into high school and kept a few sows back. But basically I went on to junior college, senior college there, and that's where I got my grasp of, or my fix of the pig world right there. And that's where I decided that I don't want to be an ag teacher anymore. I mean, I went to school to be a high school ag teacher. I said I want to go to school and be a pig farmer, and it was just the exposure to everything. And so for me, I guess that turned the light on, not necessarily a certain pig or anything, but just the fix of it. I don't know why I love it. I know that I do, and I think if you ask most people, this is a very addicting thing, and that's great. But you get the piece of it, you get competition, you get to meet a lot of great people, you get to go out and breed genetics and make things better. And here's the pieces that I have. I'm going to put these pieces together. I'm going to make better livestock. And for me, I guess when I was in junior college, that's when I really got hooked on breeding hogs, on the love of the show pig industry, the purebred industry right there, and it's continued all the way through.
My deal goes way back to when I was a very young man, and our deal's a family deal. I have 3 sons and a daughter and some grandkids now, and it all started when I was, to be honest with you, I was 8, 9 years old, and my dad was, he had some sickness problems, and he passed away as a very young man. But anyway, to get into it, we had some bears on feed one year, and he had to go to a clinic and was actually gone for about 47 days, and this was about the 60 days right before San Antonio that year. And my older sister and I showed bears, and he called me every night. Of course, we didn't have cell phones in those days, and he called me every night, and I weighed those bears every other day, and on the telephone he'd tell me how to feed. And it just intrigued me and amazed me so much that one of those 2 bears was the grand bear that year. He was a purebred Hampshire bear, and my older sister won San Antonio, and that was a bear that I fed with my dad telling me how to feed him over telephone with no internet, no cameras, and that intrigued me so much at how he could do that. And so then it's been passed on, and I've told everybody that the knowledge in our family skips a generation. So I went from my dad to my boys, and they're all involved in it. But those are things that really intrigued me as a child, and it just, you take pieces and you put them together and you watch things come together, and it fascinates me. Shane and I were talking the other day, or just this morning, about being patient. And I couldn't be a cattle breeder, I don't think. I don't think I could wait long enough for gestation and maturity to happen to get them into production. Man, I like to roll it over and go. And one other thing, right after I got out of college, when I thought I was really smart, you know, and had all the answers, and my dad just kind of backed off and let me do some things. And I bought a checkerboard at a conference one time that I thought was phenomenal. I mean, I thought that thing was the best thing that had ever walked. And I took him home, you know, and my dad said, yeah, you know, he's this and that. And he said, we'll just see. You know, about like that. And he gave me the rope to hang myself, because that boar died on that farm because he couldn't get up and down. You know, he was too flat-ribbed, but you know, he's heavy bone, and he had a look, and he just sat back and let me make my mistakes. And I guess of one thing that I would tell everybody that's listening to this thing is I think that's the key to this whole thing, is being open-minded enough to learn from your own mistakes, because you're going to make plenty. You just need to see what you've done and adjust and move on.
And in order for you to have that conversation with a grandkid, Jay, that you had with your father, you might have to learn to text. So that might be an limiting factor. Did you want to weigh in on that?
You know, I can't. Only briefly, just because to tell the kids out there a little bit that it is possible not to grow up in a seed stock operation, because I am actually opposite of Jay. Grew up in a commercial operation. Even though I was lucky in the fact that Dad was always so busy, he did allow me to take the checkbook and go buy boars for him. Now, obviously, we had limits, and I had limits. But I went, as a kid, you know, I used to go around some of the breeders, Johnny Sorholst and Stanley Martins and Don and Mark Peter, and now the Peter family is starting to bring their Hampshires back to the level they were then. And so with that being said, I guess more than anything, if you have the stockmanship ability bred into you and you have the genetic instinct to do it, you don't necessarily have to have a certain per se kind of a background. I was very fortunate in my county to have a livestock judging coach that was amazing. He doesn't even know it to this day, and if I ever see him again, I can't wait to tell him what an impact he had in my life. Just because his ability to teach me how to analyze livestock is what's been able to help me breed hogs. And I do think that's something the younger generation needs to watch out just a little bit. Take the time to you know, get involved in livestock judging and things, because there's no doubt in my mind, not only are the best feeders the ones that can analyze them and pick them out, but the best feeders are the ones that can analyze them and be able to make the changes within their feeding programs. And if you don't have that ability to analyze livestock and also do it and be honest to yourself and tell yourself every once in a while that, you know what, this one sucks. I mean, you got to be able to say that. I do on my operation on a daily basis, because I got a lot of bad ones. And the goal is to keep making them better. But anyhow, shortly said, that I mean, that livestock judging coach was a real big impact on my life and what I did.
Would like to point out before I ask my last question that those were all personal experiences. Somebody impact you, and as a 17-year-old kid, I had the same example. Old spot breeder from Dehinda, Illinois, named Robert Simmons, who every day he was alive had an old gold cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and at the age of 17, he took me under his wing and made me a spot breeder. And there is a difference, folks, between a breeder and a multiplier. Kate, I'm starting with you with this one because it's the topic that probably comes up as much as anything. You're judging Houston, I understand, come March. They classify those breeds down there at all of the southern shows, and Jay will weigh in on this later. But we have technology available today to DNA test those animals and know if they are purebred or not. So should we take the next step and just require pedigrees instead of just classifying those breeds?
Yeah, that's been a heated topic for several years, and this is obviously not the first nor the last discussion that we'll have on this. And you know, amongst this panel, we're probably going to disagree a little bit. There's a lot of things about that intrigue me in terms of with the potential of having pedigrees down there. From a standpoint, in my opinion, you're going to get more people breeding that are going to keep 1 or 2 Hampshire sows and try to make that, you know, make their own Hampshire pig down there to take to that show. And then from my standpoint, that opens our genetic base up. It gets more people actually breeding Hampshire hogs rather than just a select few trying to breed the mass majority. So from that standpoint, it intrigues me in terms of just getting more and more people involved in the purebred industry, getting more people involved in making the next generation and trying to make that next generation better. Now, there's not all positives to it. There's a lot of paper trail that comes with it, and a lot of responsibility from those people that are making those purebred hogs to get the would get the papers recorded in time and transferred in time and make sure everything's legit on your pedigree, the ear notch matches. So there's a lot of paperwork that goes along with it, and there's a lot of paper trail. So it would take a lot of responsibility from a lot of people to get it done. I don't think it's impossible, and from the standpoint of widening the genetic base, it certainly does intrigue me.
I'll come to you, Shane. But Jay, paperwork is part of living in America. Whether you're raising and showing pigs or not, we have to deal with paperwork day in and day out, no matter what business we're in. Isn't that part of the training process for young people?
Yeah, it is. And everybody does it in different ways, and a lot of people have deadlines within their own system that they get things done, and I admire those people that can get that done. I'm actually one of the superintendents at the San Antonio Bear Show, and I helped with Houston for several years, and I'm on the executive board of NSR at the present time, and we talk about it just like these guys you will tell it's a topic that keeps coming up over and over and over. From my family standpoint, it'd be great for us because we've still got so many purebred hogs and a lot of purebred sows, and I can see both sides of it. In Texas alone, we validate everything and pull hair on every pig for a validation standpoint, and there's upwards of 55,000 pigs that are validated. Actually, just showing about 4 different shows. So the sheer numbers of it, with probably I don't know, there's probably, well, now it's way over half, but if you did something like that, the crossbreds are going to weigh in about 20 to 25% of those total heads. So it's a conversation that keeps coming up over and over. I don't have the answer for it. On our executive board, we've changed a few things up with NSR to maybe, there's been a carrot dangling there for years, as I call it, that's added money from the breeds. If a purebred wins, it's pedigreed. And when Daryl Anderson left NSR, I asked him, I said, how many of those checks have you ever written? He said, none. And so what we've done is probably maybe tried to put a little bit of money within each breed, and maybe offer some things if this pig's sired by a purebred boar, there'd be a level there. Maybe if this is sired by a purebred boar and he's stress negative, to give us some things to promote, to get started. I agree with you that it is a big part of what we do in life is paying bills and keeping your paperwork done and those types of things. It'd be great to educate the young and what we need to do. The sheer numbers and the cooperation that you're going to have, and just like the San Antonio Gilt Show we have now is a pretty big show. We'll have 1,000 to 1,500 gilts show up down there that are all pures. There's no crosses at that show, and I know you talk to girls in the office and people just transferring at the last minute, registering at the last minute. So from that standpoint, yes, it would be good to teach our youngsters that they need to do this at a very young age and keep going in the right direction. I think it would be very important. I can see both sides of it. Me personally as an old purebred breeder, I'd love to see it. I think it's just going to be hard to get done till we get a lot of people wanting to work in the same direction.
You can tell it's an election year, Shane.
And that's and I respect everyone's decision or answer and stuff. And my answer is an absolutely no. No way would I want a pedigreed barrow show at the Texas Majors in my mind. And it's from a various kind of reasons, and I'll try to somewhat explain my reasons. Obviously, for one, I get a little tired sometimes of trying to mandate shows to help the purebred breeder that's struggling selling hogs. Make them better, breed better hogs, and you'll sell them. I have a tough time with shows sometimes when we mandate them to keep some of those guys in business. And I know I'm not old school, and I know I'm not, and I respect a lot of these breeders like Jay and Jim Grimm and Chuck Olson that have done it right, have bred hogs better, and the reason they still sell hogs because they've made their hogs better. So for me, that's one of the things I don't like. When I go to the Texas Majors and you see 600 Hampshire barrows that I would call my kind of Hampshire barrows that are belted with erect ears, you're going to have that go from 600 to maybe 100 if you're lucky, and they won't be very good at that because we're not there yet in terms of making Hampshires good enough. I think by implementing it. And I talk Hampshires more because it's the breed I probably like the most, and it's the one that I think affects the most there, because the Durocs, you know what, most of them are pures anyhow. The Spots, you know what, most of them are pures anyhow. The Berks, same deal. I mean, so for me, the ones that affects the most are probably the Hampshires, and I don't believe we're there enough to be able to make enough good ones. We got to make them better before we start to make this progress and change, and we've got plenty enough purebred gilt shows going on in terms of educating them about the purebreds. And within my own program, to be able to put those belts on hogs and make them not painted and make them erect-eared, you know what? I probably use more Hampshire pedigreed boars than anyone in the United States in the crossbred breeding program anyhow. So we got to utilize the purebreds within making those crossbred Hampshire-looking things. But for me also, I think you kill the breed right there. Because if I'm going to make Hampshire barrows that are pedigreed, I'm going to cut them all because I have a demanding market for Hampshire barrows in the Southwest. I therefore then take away all the breed genetic improvement ability whatsoever, because there's no testicles left in those boars. And then before we know it, we have the gene pool the size of the Polands. No offense to the Polands, but that's where you're at. You have now cut all the boar pigs that are boar prospects. They're going to go as barrows. And then, but it's hard enough right now for me making Hampshires better because there's not enough good boars out there to do it. And we start cutting them all to go to barrow shows. We kill our breed within our set. We do the opposite thing that I think people are trying to promote by making a purebred Hampshire barrow show. I think you kill the breed. Now someday, when we can make Hampshires better, and we all quit saying that we can't make them, and I'm trying. I have not thrown in the towel like some people say they are. I'm going to try. I owe it to those breeders that came before me and set the precedence before me. Jay's dad and those breeders, the Johnny Soreholst and all those things that I grew up with, I figure I owe it to them to continue to try to make Hampshires better. So this isn't a thing that I don't like purebred Hampshires. I love them as much as anyone. It's just I think that you ruin the breed by going too fast and trying to make it a thing that's mandated to be pedigreed.
I think a lot of this is the million-dollar question, I guess, is what I'd say to start with. And anytime you talk about change, people tend to get all, well, it's bad, it's good, whatever it is. I mean, change is inevitable. It's going to happen. Sometimes it is for good. Sometimes it is for bad. I'm not big in that South deal. We don't sell a lot of pigs down there. I mean, Shane and Jay, obviously Jay lives down there. Cade's been involved in it. I've never even been to one of the Texas majors. I've sold a few pigs to it. So for me to sit out here and tell what needs to happen or set protocol for down there, I probably don't have a great handle for that. I live in show pig country, just like down in Texas. I mean, we show lots of crossbreds. We have very few pedigreed shows. With that said, we did add a purebred show to our state fair last year. If you wanted to be in the barrow or gilt, we can show barrows or gilts in our market division. We had to carry a pedigree with us this year. There were people that were for it. There were people that were against it. I don't think it changed a whole lot. The numbers were still about the same. I'll agree with Shane, the Hampshire show got a little bit weaker. But other than that, everything was basically the same. We showed light crosses and dark crosses. We added that instead of just one crossbred division. I think it's good to record hogs. I think the NSR is the backbone of the whole thing, and we do have to make sure that we record enough hogs and keep our gene pool out there. I don't know if it's necessarily the right time to start that now down the road. I kind of agree with what Shane's saying, that when we get Hampshire hogs better, you know, when we have that gene pool to do it, it's probably worth talking about. Some of the things that Jay said I really liked, you know, maybe there's a premium or some sort of bonus for having a higher percentage for pure in there, or taking the stress out of them, or those things. But for me to say that, I live in a different part of the country. I don't have enough exposure to really set protocol. My gut says at some point it'll happen, and it should, but maybe not right now.
Well, guys, I think that's a perfect place to bring to a close our debut of the On the Air at the World Pork Expo. On behalf of Jay Winter, James Bachman, Kate Hummel, Shane Brining, and Shane, I've got great news because we're going to do this again tomorrow, have healthy dialogue. This is a debut, something pioneering here with Drive Magazine and SureChamp. Here's the good news. Tomorrow, 10:30, we're going to do this again, and we've got Hampshire breeders. Jim McCoy, Steve Rodabaugh, who've been doing it a while. Hopefully they heard what we had to hear to say today. Brandon Ogle, and a spot guy from Oklahoma, Bobby Liston. 10:30 tomorrow morning. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it, and have a great day, and welcome back to the World Pork Expo 2012.